There's Bill Hagerty of Tennessee and Dan Sullivan of Alaska. There we have a split screen. They're both old friends of mine, and this shows. Dan Sullivan, you're out there on the left coast. I don't know where you are today, but your home state is Alaska. Did I get it wrong on this story? I mean, I don't feel like the blame game this second because lives are at risk and lives are being lost and the whole thing's a nightmare catastrophe. But somebody's got to answer for certain things that could have been a lot better to mitigate this story, Dan Sullivan. Don't you think?
Larry, I couldn't agree more with you on that. By the way, Happy New Year.
You too.
And look, we have big wildfires out in Alaska, and but the way in which you manage them is that you can't focus everything through the lens of climate change. And what these guys have been doing, you know, the president mentioned the other day of this smelt and endangered species, issue that doesn't get Californians water. There's going to be a lot of after action in terms of looking at this. We actually had a discussion in our Senate luncheon today on this very issue with Republican senators. There's a lot we can do to make our country safer so we don't have these catastrophes. And it is a real catastrophe out there. Our prayers go out to everybody in Southern California right now.
Well, that is true. Prayers go out to everybody out there. As I said, my own brother, my dear brother and his wife live out there in Hollywood. They had to evacuate last night. Fortunately, they've come back in because the Hollywood fire has been contained. Senator Hagerty, are you all thinking about any federal policies? Dan Sullivan mentioned stuff that could be done. What do you think, Bill Hagerty?
Well, Larry, when you were in the Trump administration back in 2020, President Trump signed an emergency order that would have allowed California to address this. Gavin Newsom, I can't believe he's still in office, by the way. Gavin Newsom decided not to abide by that, not to fill the reservoirs, instead to support this smelt at some part of the Pacific Ocean and divert all the water that otherwise would have gone to Southern California into the reservoirs and into the fire hydrants, by the way. Gavin Newsom decides that's not important. It's a matter of priorities, Larry. And the Democrats' priorities, particularly in the far left coast state of California, are way out of alignment with what the American public needs. I feel so sorry. My heart goes out. My prayers go out to the people in Southern California who are suffering. I've spoken with a number of my friends by phone over the past couple of days. It's devastating, but this is something that's made much worse by the fact that politicians in California have made terrible choices, prioritizing the environment, prioritizing these far left causes that really are way outside of the bounds of reality.
You know, it's the highest tax state in the union. I mean, you know that.
Yep.
It's even worse than New York, for heaven's sakes, and if such a thing is possible. And those water and power services are pretty darn bad. They've been rotting around. They've not been improved. And, of course, paychecks, after-tax paychecks for working folks have been doing very badly. Anyway, speaking of after-tax paychecks, Senator Dan Sullivan, I go to you. The reporting is that after a very spirited conversation, Mr. Trump prevailed on Senate Republicans to please go one big, beautiful bill, which is where the House is going to go. Money bills originate in the House, as you both well know. It's not a war, but that's where they're going to start. That's going to be the final decision. Is that the correct reading? One big, beautiful bill, Mr. Sullivan?
Larry, I don't think we're there yet. I think your reporting by Aisha at the top of the program was accurate. We did have a good debate, a good discussion with the president when he came out and said, look, we're unified. We're focused on the same issues, which is border security, unleashing American energy, peace through strength, rebuilding our military, extending the tax cuts. We are completely unified on that. I would say with regard to the budget reconciliation bills, it's an ongoing discussion. That was a good one last night. And look, the key is we want speed and we want success. And those are the two issues. They're a little bit in tension, but, we'll get there. Ultimately, it's going to be the president who decides which way in which we go. But as your reporting mentioned, we're going to be working on a backup plan in terms of two bills. I think there's a lot of unity in the Senate on this two-bill approach, but the president will make the ultimate call. But it was a good discussion last night, and we're unified to get the mandate that President Trump got in his overwhelming election, and that's the big goal.
Senator Hagerty, we haven't actually talked about this, you and I personally, but I'm for one big, beautiful bill because I don't want to delay the tax cuts. I don't want to delay the tax extension. I don't want to delay the new tax cuts like the 15% corporate tax, which is fabulous, or the no tax on tips or the no tax on overtime, both of which are fabulous. I don't want to delay a blue-collar boom. I want it to start in 2025, this year. I don't want to wait till next year or the year after. So I've been rooting for the one big, beautiful bill the whole time. And the reports are Aisha Hasney always gets it right. And I've heard, too, that Mr. Thune did say that, yes, we'll go with the one bill approach. But if it bogs down, there might be some changes. So take us out, Senator Hagerty. What's cooking here? What's the real story?
Well, I think the real story is that my colleague Dan Sullivan just mentioned. There's great unity among Republicans here on both sides of Capitol Hill, the House and the Senate. We want to see our energy sector put back into business. We want to see our border secured, and we want to see our economy take off again, Larry. And it's policies like a 15% corporate tax rate that's going to put us back in the position of having our economy skyrocket above all other major economies in the world. We're going to see more investment here. You recall back in the first Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we saw our economy grow at twice the rate of any other major economy. We saw our tax revenues come in at 30% above what the CBO predicted. We saw lower unemployment than we've ever seen. We need to get back to that place again. We need to make it happen. I agree with you, as quickly as we possibly can. That's what the American public has voted for. I'm looking forward to working with Senator Sullivan, all of my colleagues here, and President Trump to make certain that happens as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, gentlemen, Happy New Year. We appreciate you coming on very much. Senators Bill Hagerty, Senator Dan Sullivan.